Welcome to The Inside. This is the time of year that the world goes on summer holiday, filling cinema seats and beach chairs to relax and escape the heat. And as Hollywood takes a break before back to school's rush, there is encouraging news about the health of the business. Powered by movies including Top Gun Maverick, Jurassic World Dominion, Elvis, and the Minions, the summer box office broke $3 billion in ticket sales this last week. I am Jim Chabin in Los Angeles, and with me is Wim Byens. He serves as CEO of Cineonic, and he joins us live from Brussels, Belgium, where it's evening. Good evening, Wim.
Hey, good morning, Jim. Good to hear you.
Well, it's the end of kind of the summer. Kids are getting ready to go back to school, but boy,
Yes.
there's some really terrific news out. Disney reported their quarterly earnings last week, and it was just called Blockbuster Quarterly Earnings. Strong movie, strong theme park, consumer products, and even their new streaming services just exceeded 221 million subscribers, exceeding Netflix. So box office overall is 130% over last year, and that's just 17% short of the record 2019 revenues. Even China seems to be waking back up with a hit comedy movie that was produced there. Wim, what are you hearing from your exhibitors around the world right now?
Well, I think that it has been stunning, right? I think everybody is being very positive about the blockbusters, and we had an incredible treat, let's be honest. I think there is some kind of feeling about what's the next quarter going to do for us, right? Everybody's looking forwards, right? So even though it's been, I believe the business are doing very well, everybody see what the next quarter going to do. So I think that what I can hear is, in general, it has been a great quarter, and people looking forward what's next. But I think the blockbusters do great, right, and has really performed very well. I think there's still this content, which is the amount of content I do believe is still on the limited side, right, for some of them. So some of them tell me that, well, we like to see more content coming, especially this mid-range content. So there's still this kind of wish that there's more content coming for the mid-range of the market. And then specifically, people are looking at Q3, how we're going to work ourselves through Q3. That's the kind of thing I hear. But I think the last quarter has been great.
Well, I think it's fair to characterize the summer for the entertainment industry on the whole as triumphant. But also, as we get ready to head back to work this fall, just about everybody is talking about the weather, the headlines, the droughts, and the serious implications of climate change and the environment of the world. So we want to take an opportunity in this episode to talk about this important topic with a leading global expert.
Jim, we have an excellent guest to talk about the climate crisis and what we can all do about it. Kathleen Rogers is the president of earthday.org for more than 20 years. She has been an environmental attorney and advocate focusing on international public policy and law. Earthday.org now reaches into more than 192 countries. Welcome, Kathleen Rogers.
Very nice of you to have me.
First of all, I want to thank you for being with us, right? Taking time in your busy schedule. When we talk about climate, right, and how our actions impact the planet, it's not just a new topic in the public discourse. Yet today we still have a myriad of opinions and perspectives on the topic. What could you say to those who aren't putting the climate at front of the agenda? And from your perspective, what roles does entertainment play in the conversation around climate?
Well, that's really the big question. On the first point, study after study is coming out that indicates that people are not taking that they're so overwhelmed with it that they cannot possibly take personal responsibility for it. There was a great couple of great new polls that demonstrated a general lack of commitment to voting around climate, becoming an advocate for climate because they're so overwhelmed. And this may be post COVID, and it may be just the what feels like the insurmountable news that we hear every day about fires and storms and weather generally and collapsing of glaciers, etc. So I think, if I were to be honest, I think we've done a great disservice to the people of the world by not investing a huge amount in education, by not viewing climate change not just as a risk, but as a massively important opportunity where people can make lots of money, the jobs of the future, why their lives will be healthier, why we have this opportunity to redo everything on the planet. And we've invested very little in that.
Are they afraid of it? Is that what you see? Are they afraid of it, or they don't know how to deal with it? What's your
They
opinion
don't
about
know
that?
how to deal with it. There aren't practical ways that they can take it. I mean, people point out everything from food waste to don't drive your car to do this, do that. It's very negative. It's very focused on stop doing what you're doing. And to a certain extent, people will absorb part of that. But at the end of the day, guilt is the worst thing you can do to convince people that they should change their ways. It just doesn't work. It doesn't matter whether it's the environment or religion or whatever the subject is. People just don't have the capacity to stay worried all that long. So we have an endless capacity to worry people, but the impact has been pretty bad. So the flip side of that is that you have news worldwide in the US and Massachusetts and other places around the world where governments are taking aim at climate. And as you know, the bill that passed today, it's going to be the largest investment in American history in climate change. It deals with a whole bunch of issues. But I think it's also the sales pitch is that it's going to create jobs, millions and millions of jobs. And so if you translate the dire predictions into a positive outcome, and goes to your second question of how culture, if you want to change culture, you have to use culture, that it is really important that Hollywood and other types and forms of media that believe the same way I do, that either making fun of something or inspiring people or talking about opportunity, whatever the film is, it's much better than the dire predictions that you've seen time after time coming from governments and environmental groups like my own and other people. So it's time to flip the playbook into something more opportunity focused.
So emissions come from many sectors. So we need many solutions to decarbonize the economy. We have already seen reactions from companies like Apple, who have pledged to make their supply chain carbon neutral by 2030. How can the entertainment industry step up the game and set or achieve new goals?
Well, you can never underestimate the power of culture, and Hollywood is a perfect example of setting goals for themselves. I do think it's important that those steps be taken, and to the extent you can measure those emissions and they're honest. There have been plenty of studies out recently by third parties that are saying that a lot of the commitments that big business is making just aren't accurate. So I think transparency and accuracy of what you think you'll save and allowing third parties to come in and judge whether you did it right or didn't, and then offer advice on how to fix it up is an essential part, because lots of well-meaning companies are committing to things but not reaching their goals. And that includes Apple for sure. On the culture side, I don't care what issue it is, Hollywood, films, any kind of media has a tremendous impact, negatively and positively. I see in my own lifetime that how Hollywood really got behind LGBT issues and brought them into the mainstream. And the progress that they made was, in my view, couldn't have come soon enough, but was stunningly fast given where we were when Hollywood started and where we ended up just a few years later, because it made it human, it made it personal, it made it absolutely in everyone's living room all the time, and with incredibly endearing characters. And it broke down all that resistance. Not all of it, trust me, we're still having lots of problems with in that area. But the environmental community is looking for models like that Hollywood helped pull off, to really break down resistance to climate change and to environmental issues, and to help people understand that they can take steps in their lives, but more important, that they can have an impact on their government officials and others by taking some sort of action. And so that's what we look to from Hollywood. And I think we're starting to get it. I'd love to see it in every sitcom and every television show, integrating the language and the humor that we've seen in previous films. But again, Hollywood has to do what is going to make it money, back to that quarterly concept. But it would be wonderful if they could embrace it in a way that, again, we saw in Don't Look Up, but have it be on a regular, consistent basis, addressing it and viewing it from an entertainment perspective. Storytelling changes everything.
Director Adam McKay has been quoted as saying climate change is terrifying and sad and absurd. How do you engage with somebody over this difficult topic? And what keeps on inspiring you to do this work?
Well, you have to have a sense of humor, which I may not sound like I do, but I'm a pretty funny person. I think also most of us were kind of born with a little cape on our backs, like the sort of superhero thing. If you're an organizer by heart, you were probably doing it when you were 4 years old, and I was always organizing people to do things. And I find that so many of us didn't just walk into this; it's part of our personalities. But above all, you need a sense of humor. You absolutely need optimism and a sense of humor, both of which I call us, many of the environmental community, pathological optimists, because in the face of incredible facts, we're still optimistic. Don't Look Up did a great. It was irony, it was humor, it was insanity, it was all of those things built into one. And again, I find in my community when we're together that people have also developed a sense of irony, but it's part of that sort of sense of humor that's critically important.
Are there any model countries that do environmental law that everybody else can copy? Is the U.S. now the leader with this legislation?
Yeah,
Where do you
no,
look for
yeah,
models overseas?
yeah, we've not been leaders. And it's interesting. I certainly believe the climate crisis is one of the gravest threats to humanity. But I think what we are seeing globally is a piecemeal approach. So certain countries like Sweden have got the plastics recycling, plastic use, they've got it down. They're fabulous. But on other things, they're not. Norway is an oil country contributing millions of dollars to protect the Amazon, while it's being cleared for meat production, which then finds its way into Europe. So we have this endless nonsensical approach to climate, but you are seeing countries that are coming up with really good approaches to specific pieces of the climate crisis. And then you have Ukraine and Russia's aggression there, which has turned the tables on everybody. So you're always going to have these balances and other activities and things that are happening worldwide that will disrupt commerce or the move to renewable energies. And you're seeing them all play out at once: the weather, global possibility of recession, of the war, and everything is happening at once. Do I think we're in a mini crisis? Of course I do. But I also see on the technology side, on the move of governments, the move of climate leaders in business, NGOs, faith groups, I do see two steps forward, one step back, but I see progress. And we certainly have the technology and money to do it. I don't need to tell any of you the world's awash in cash. So the money's there, the investors are there, just made to come up with the right incentives.
This is an important week. You mentioned as we speak, the Inflation Reduction Act is being signed, but more than anything, it seems as if it's a real environmental a policy. I heard Al Gore interviewed yesterday talking about this is the biggest a bill of its kind in history. Tell us how we're going to see the effects of this. Where are we going to see it? How are we going to see it on a local level in our local communities? Talk a little bit about what this is.
Yeah, so there are so many pieces of this act. There are renewable energy infrastructure investments. I think it's 260 billion, 80 billion of which is in transportation, and with EVs in particular, there's money for a green bank. I think it's $27 billion will be going into a green bank, which will deploy clean energy technology, which will mean jobs. And the list sort of goes on and on. I think it's $1.5 billion for methane reduction, which is something people don't talk about that much. It also allows EPA to clean up air pollution around schools and ports. Port of LA is a perfect example. So, and heavy trucks, reduction emissions. And you're starting to see how this massive, it's going to take years for this to roll out, but because they did it in the budget, it's not something that can be undone. And that's the beauty of the reconciliation process and the budget process. And there were other things in how's it going to be financed? Taxes on companies is one of the big ones. So it's being financed. So while it's not tax or revenue neutral, it does have a source of income, which I think Americans in general would appreciate. Taxing companies that haven't been paying their fair share. So it's an interesting combination of tax incentives, lending, and then revenue generating. So it's certainly not what we wanted when we started this process. It's quite different. There's nothing in there. One of the tragedies is there's nothing in there to green schools. There's a little bit that you could be used around this, but more than half of US schools are in deplorable condition. And so we really need to build the green schools infrastructure because it impacts millions and millions of our poorest kids. That was taken out. So there are things that we hoped would be in, and then there are concessions to a couple of senators. Don't need to name them, but they're pretty clear around pipelines and other things. But the Reduction Act is supposed to reduce climate pollution by 40% by the end of the decade, and by emissions from electricity by 80%. So these are big numbers, and it's one of those things you're going to have to judge after the fact. We won't know if that's actually going to happen, but it's inevitable that we're going to change.
Our guest insider today is CEO of Earth Day Org, Kathleen Rogers. We'll be right back.
Cinionic proudly sponsors The Insiders. As a fellow insider, have you ever thought about how much energy it takes to play a movie in the cinema? We did. With laser projection by Cinionic, the big screen looks better and is more environmentally friendly than ever before. Our laser projectors use as much as 70% less energy compared to traditional lamp-based projectors. For more information, visit cinionic.com/sustainability and discover how our eco-aware approach is changing the cinema experience for you and our planet.
Our guest insider today is CEO of the Earth Day organization, Kathleen Rogers. Wim, you're a technology company. Cinionic has projection and sound technology in 50% of the movie theaters in the world. You do business in 50 countries. Sustainability has become something that is very important to your company. Talk about why it's important to you and how does that show itself within the Cinionic product line?
So for Cinionic and for Barco, sustainability is on top of mind. And I think that any company who wants to, let me take one example. If you want to recruit the young generation, I think you better figure out how you're going to answer this question to them when they arrive and they say, hey, we're interested in this job, but how is your company doing about about what you're doing with the planet, what you're doing with Earth and stuff like that. I mean, those are questions which you're getting today just on job interviews. So I think as the size of company we are, there's no way around this, right? So that's just one angle kind of thing. So for us, as an example, in cinema, there's a huge amount of consumption of energy because we are creating light. We're creating light on a big screen, and creating light on a big screen specifically with bulbs, with lamps. There's a ton of energy consumption and a ton of heat, but dissipation, what happens. Now, as an example, and that's been one of our crusades, we were the first one in 2014 in the cinema industry to come up with this technology called, laser light illumination. And this was about changing from lamps to laser, but it allowed not just to get a better picture, more colors and all those things and better uniformity. It also allowed to save 50, 60, 70% of energy for the same performance on the screen. And those are things we can, right? And I think as an industry, or better as a company, if you can, you have to, right? I think we have a duty, as all industries, all business to business, business to consumer. We have a duty to see what all can we do. Right now, we're going to theaters and even come up with ideas on how they can lower their consumption of energy, not just on the projector, but on all different kind of things. How to measure it first, how then to be aware about it, and how then to reduce it. Do we do enough? I mean, Kathleen, you probably will tell us we should do all more, and I can only 100% agree on that. But I think that the fact that the train is started, I think, is at least the first positive thing I can see. Yeah.
I think this is incredibly rich conversation because we have the advocacy in the goal setting organization in Kathleen, and in Wim, we've got people who are living it and trying to work it. Do you find your customers embrace this, and it's good for Cinionic to be innovative in this way?
Well, let me give let me give you an example, right? And I will share something which is not public, but by saying so, it will be public. But we had at our last show, our last cinema show, we came up with an innovation together with a partner of us, which would help understanding better the whole energy consumption, etc., within cinemas, right? And this is not made for cinemas. This is made for other industries. And we thought this is not a bad idea. So we said, well, let me, invite a few customers and let's talk about it. And maybe we find out of 5, 1 or 2 which are interested in it. All customers we spoke with said, that's what we want to have. And we just were pitching it from, is there an interest, right? And I think it goes about awareness about this. It goes about how can I help the organization to be better at it? How can I make it a positive story? I like what you said, Kathleen. The storytelling has to be positive, not about you're doing a bad job, we don't like what you do. That's not motivating people. We have to create positive stories. But of course, we're going to have to measure. We're going to have to give tools for people to realize things doing it a different day. And when people realize, oh, I can do things different, better, and it's going to save so much energy, it's going to be better for my company, and I'm also going to do a favor for the whole climate challenge which we have ahead of us, it makes them feel much better. And we were I mean, a little bit taken by surprise about the positive reactions on this, but it just shows, I think, that how much our customers are ready for this.
Kathleen, Wim mentions that young people being recruited into the company considered important. Do you have hope for the future because of the generation coming up where the environment is a part of their self-image? What gives you hope?
So for me, it's funny from an organization which is about people, right? 20 million people came out on the streets and on Earth Day in 1970, and the rest is history. Every single environmental law you can think of, give or take a couple, was passed in rapid succession. But what gives me hope is technology. That's why I like what Wim was saying, because I do think, despite me being in the job of changing people's minds, that's what I do every day. I have great hope that inventiveness, entrepreneurship, and technology companies like Wim's are going to take the bull by the horns and just do it themselves. Not just because they'll save energy and not just because it's the right thing. Both of those things are motivators, but because you can make a lot of money and you can make dramatic change. And so those are the things I think that actually motivate people, and particularly companies. Those three things: being in the vanguard and doing the right thing, and most important, making money and selling people on new technologies. That's where I have the greatest hope. Now, those could be young 15-year-olds with solar irons, or it could be Hollywood movie making companies that have come up with technologies that are going to save them money and are appealing to their customers. But either way, I think I am very bullish on, if I can use a Wall Street term, on the power of technology. And then my job will be to build a green consumer movement and to promote it. Because I think that's where I get the greatest satisfaction, is when you have people turning around and embracing it, not just, again, because it's the right thing to do, because either they can save money or they think it's cool. So all these things are at play, but I'm seeing so much of it becoming integrated. That's where I get my sort of optimistic, sort of permanent optimistic streak. But it definitely incorporates business and technology.
The issue of climate change can sometimes seem out of reach for an individual. Does buying an electrical car or putting solar panels on the roof makes a difference? And what step can each of us take to make a tangible impact?
That's a really good question. So I'm not going to start with solar panels or turning off the water when I brush my teeth or even buying organic. I mean, it's voting, right? We have a democracy. And so individual behavior is critical. And I'd start with the very top thing, which is our individual vote. And it may seem like to many people that they're a cog in the wheel and my vote doesn't matter. And all of those things certainly have been undermined over the last 6 years by people who are either skeptics or intentionally undermining democracy in this country. But I do think voting, I think what you eat is really important. And within that, there are 4 or 5 different things: food waste and going organic or buying local. All of those things make a difference. Buying an EV has been beyond the pocketbooks of 99% of Americans. I mean, let's be serious. These cars are incredibly expensive. So you have to make it really reasonable and affordable. And some car companies are doing that, but that's the first step, right? You still have to charge it and make sure your energy costs don't go through the roof. And all of these things need to be applauded. I need to applaud my neighbors and the community writ large that put solar on their house. I can't because I've got too many trees around my house. But people have to see the financial incentives, they have to be patted on the back, they have to join a community of other people that have done something that 10 years ago would have looked crazy, aka putting solar on your house. So I think I'd start by the big ticket items for me are voting, and then what costs you the most and how you can convert. But I'm not expecting the average American or the average European or the average African to give up a huge part of their income to do the right thing. And so we have to make it affordable, and we have to make and spend the time and money and advertising and thematically wave it into movies in order to make the whole thing seem perfectly natural, which it's not now. And it still remains out of reach for most people because they don't get it or they can't afford it.
Well, let's hope that the year ahead is one of both innovation, but also awareness and cultural understanding of this topic. And let's hope there are many stories to come from Hollywood about placing the wind at your back in all that you do. And let's hope that we encourage people to become environmental voters.
Well, I know you can do it. Hollywood is hugely influential. We are the most powerful movie industry in the world. And I'm really happy to be here and know I'm going to see a lot more of it.
Well, I can't think of a better and more passionate voice to have in this cause than yours. Thank goodness Earth Day and your organization are there. And we are thrilled to be aligned with you as an organization like Advanced Imaging Society. So thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. You guys are awesome.
Thank you, Kathleen. Wim and I will be right back. Wim, that was fantastic. Kathleen has been, a passionate voice.
Absolutely.
Wim, there's a concept in sustainability called the circular economy. Explain what that is and how it manifests itself in a large company like Cineonic Barco.
When we talk about circular economy, we try to make, the circle be fully round, right? And so, as an example, when you build the products, the first thing you want to make sure that the product is not built to throw away after, it's done. You want to be able to repair it, right? So when you look at, we talk about model design, we talk about how we deal with spare parts, but it's an example of how you make sure the product can stay longer into the market, which, by the way, is an asset to our customers, but because of you creating, tools on the repair side. Now, the other one is that in the circular economy, the next step you go is that you say, well, we can repurpose it, right? We can have projectors which we take back from our customers and repurpose for other customers, or better, we repurpose for other applications. So repurposing equipment, not just again throwing it away in the end of when it's maybe the end of the lifetime for that customer or that application, but repurposing is a second part for us on circular economy. The third one for us is remanufacturing, and a good example of that is, we talk about bringing lamp projectors to laser. And now, of course, you can do that by, you can buy a new laser projector, and that's all great. But you can also have an existing, and in our world, this is a Series 2 projector, a lamp projector. We strip out the components of which is related to the lamp, and we're bringing all the laser-related components. And so we're remanufacturing the projector, and we're giving it a new life. So that's on the remanufacturing side. And then on the fourth side there is what we call recycle. So now what we do is when the life cycle is fully taken after repair, after repurposing, after remanufacturing, we take it back and we take it apart, and all the parts gets recycled, and that's also why, from a product design point of view, we're already taking in consideration to make sure that the parts and the materials we use, that the recycle opportunity is there. That whole combination, or that whole circle, if you want, is what we call circular economy. And it is something we're really striving on very hard with our laser, or better, projector technology. The Barco projectors which are built are helping, or let's say, we can fulfill the circular economy there.
And do you find for this to happen, is it more efficient over time, cost effective? Is this something your customers, what's the commercial approach to this for a customer?
It's. I remember when we sold Series 2 projectors, I made statements at that time, and of course we have competitors like anybody else, right, which also deliver products, and they can all do functionally similar things. But I made statements. I said, well, our investment will be secured over a longer period of time, and then the customers, yes, 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 and so on. Right now, when we came up, 3-4 years ago with the remanufacturing opportunity, bringing for lamp to laser, we have proven, and right now we have more than 20,000 projectors which we have brought worldwide from a lamp projector to laser. We have proven that we can prolong the lifetime, and that means these investments is prolonged over a longer period of time. So it was part of our concept. We built the modular design which allows us to do that. Now, as a company, we could have said we're not going to do this because this is cumbersome and costly. We're just going to go to new projectors, which some other maybe companies have made that call. We said no. We stand for the value of we can do it technology-wise, and we always have this motto: if we can, we want to do it when it brings value. But there was a significant economical value for the customers because in the end, that's the only thing what works. If it doesn't have an economical value, it is hard to get customers motivated. So it has to have an economical value for them. Yeah.
Well, what gives me hope is that a company like yours is giving an economic reason for advancing environmental technology. And technology, in the end, I think, is our great hope for solving these issues. Thank you, Wim, and thank you, Kathleen. Our quote of the day is from Elvis Presley. He said, "When things go wrong, don't go with them." Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Wim. Thank you all for listening. The Insiders is presented by Cinionic and produced by the Advanced Imaging Society in Hollywood. Our executive producers are Adam Castles in New York and Mike Piltzecker in Los Angeles. Brett Harrison produced today's show, and our technical director is Matthew Bach Lombardo. This is AIS.